My name is Greg. I am 31, male, and until very recently, I thought my life was pretty solid. I had a steady job as a graphic designer, a nice house in the suburbs, and a marriage I thought was as stable as they come. Turns out I was way off the mark. Let me back up a bit. I met Lila when I was 23 at a trivia night. She was the loud one, blurting out answers even when they were totally wrong, but somehow it worked for her. She had this confidence about her that was hard to ignore. I was drawn to it, even when she argued with the quizmaster about a question she had definitely gotten wrong. At the time, she was working at a boutique clothing store, but she never stayed in one job for too long. She would bounce between gigs, retail, a stint as a receptionist, even a short-lived dog-walking business before eventually deciding that homemaking was her calling. Honestly, I did not mind. I made enough for the both of us, and it felt good to provide. Plus, she always kept the house looking great, and she was happier focusing on that than stressing over jobs she did not like. Our relationship worked because we were opposites in all the right ways. Lila was impulsive and full of energy, the kind of person who would suggest a weekend road trip 2 hours before sunset with zero plans and no gas in the car. I was the guy who would roll his eyes but secretly enjoy it. She kept things exciting, and I made sure we did not starve along the way. It was a good balance, or so I thought. Fast forward a few years, and life was chugging along smoothly. About 6 months ago, Lila decided she wanted to get back into shape. I was all for it. She had been talking about getting into fitness for years, but never really got around to it. So when she signed up for a gym membership and even booked sessions with a personal trainer, I thought, good for her. This is where Dylan comes in. Dylan is her trainer. He is 28 and looks like he was carved out of marble in a Greek god factory. You know the type, perfect smile, abs you could grate cheese on, and a personality that is just charming enough to make people overlook the fact that he probably spends more time looking at himself in the mirror than anything else. At first, I did not think much of him. I mean, he is a personal trainer. It is literally his job to motivate people and help them feel good about themselves. If Lila was excited about working out and had a trainer she liked, that sounded like a win to me. But as time went on, I started to notice little things. Lila began talking about Dylan a lot, not in a he is so great at his job kind of way, but in a way that made me feel like I was living with a walking Yelp review for the guy. Dylan says squats are the best for toning your legs. Dylan recommended this new protein shake. It is amazing. Dylan says I should focus on core strength before cardio. It was Dylan this, Dylan that. Still, I brushed it off. She was into her fitness routine, and I was not about to be the guy who got jealous over a personal trainer. But then, the changes started. First, it was the wardrobe. Lila's gym attire went from old leggings and oversized t-shirts to these matching high-end sets that looked like they came straight out of an influencer's ad. Tight leggings, crop tops, and colors so bright you could see them from space. She said it made her feel confident, which, again, seemed reasonable enough. Then came the extra gym sessions. What started as a couple of workouts a week turned into 5, sometimes 6 days at the gym. Her sessions with Dylan went from 1 hour to 2, and then she would stay even longer to do cardio. By the time she got home, she was all smiles, talking about how much Dylan had pushed her that day, or how he had shown her some new technique. At this point, I started to feel like an outsider in my own marriage. It was not just the gym stuff either. Lila was glued to her phone more than usual, scrolling through Instagram or texting someone constantly. Whenever I walked into the room, she would lock her screen or flip her phone face down on the table. When I asked who she was talking to, she would brush it off with, "Oh, just some friends from the gym." I wanted to believe her, I really did. But the more I noticed, the harder it got to ignore the nagging feeling in my gut. One night, we were watching TV, and she got a text. She glanced at her phone, smiled, and then set it down without replying. I caught the name Dylan on the screen before she locked it. When I asked her about it, she said he was just checking in on her progress. "It is part of his job," she said with a laugh, like I was crazy for even asking. At this point, I was starting to connect the dots, but I did not want to jump to conclusions. I figured I would give her the benefit of the doubt because, hey, maybe I was just being paranoid. She had never given me a reason not to trust her before, so why start doubting her now? But then, something clicked. One night, I was scrolling through Instagram and stumbled across Dylan's profile. It was exactly what I expected. Shirtless gym selfies, motivational quotes, and a highlight reel of his success stories. But what caught my eye was a picture of him and Lila in the gym, both of them laughing, with a caption that said, "Love training this one, always brings the energy." I could not shake the feeling that something was off. I decided I needed to see for myself what was really going on. And that is when I came up with the idea to join her at the gym. The plan was not elaborate, though. I did not want to accuse her of anything or make it a big deal. I just casually said one evening, "Hey, I have been sitting around too much. Maybe I should come to the gym with you sometime, get back into shape." Her reaction was interesting. For a split second, she froze, not in an obvious way, but long enough for me to catch it. Then she recovered and said, "Oh yeah, sure, that would be fun." The enthusiasm sounded a little forced, but I let it slide. A few days later, we headed to her gym together. Lila seemed on edge, which I chalked up to her not being used to having me there. She kept saying things like, "You might want to take it easy your first day. Dylan's sessions can be intense." I just smiled and played dumb, like I was not secretly analyzing her every move. When we arrived, I got my first real look at Dylan in action. The guy was exactly what I expected: tall, ripped, and obnoxiously confident. He was in the middle of showing some poor guy how to use a machine when he spotted Lila. His whole face lit up, and he practically bounded over to us like an overexcited puppy. "Lila, ready to crush it today?" he said, flashing a smile that could have powered a small town. "Always," she replied, her voice just a little too cheerful. Then she turned to me and said, "Oh, this is Greg. He wanted to join today." Dylan extended a hand and I shook it. His grip was firm, of course it was. "Nice to meet you, man. Always good to see couples working out together." I nodded and said something generic like, "Yeah, figured it was time to stop being a couch potato." He laughed like I just told the funniest joke ever. Then he led us to the free weight section, where he started putting Lila through her paces. I tried to focus on my own workout, but it was hard not to notice the dynamic between them. It was not anything overt, nothing you could point to and say, "Aha," but the way they interacted felt different. She laughed at every dumb joke he made, even the ones that were not remotely funny. He would correct her form, standing just a little too close, his hand hovering near her back like he was afraid she would spontaneously collapse. And then there was the way she looked at him. It was not the way you look at your trainer, it was the way you look at someone who has become a little too important in your life. At one point, Dylan suggested we do a partner workout. He paired me with Lila, which I thought was a nice touch, until I realized it was just so he could keep hovering around her while I was too busy lifting to notice. Except I did notice. I noticed everything. After the workout, we headed home and I could tell Lila was trying to gauge my mood. "That was fun, huh?" she said, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, it was all right," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She did not push it, and neither did I. But inside, I was starting to piece things together. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to everything: the phone, the extra time at the gym, the way she talked about Dylan. It all started to form a picture I did not like. One night, while Lila was in the shower, I saw her phone sitting on the counter. Normally, I would not have touched it, but something told me to look. I opened her messages and was not surprised to see Dylan's name at the top of the list. I did not have time to read the whole thread, but the bits I skimmed were enough. Things like, "Had so much fun today," and "You always make my day better." There were not any explicit texts, but the tone was way too friendly for my liking. That night, I could not keep it in anymore. "Lila," I said after dinner, "what is going on with you and Dylan?" She froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean. You are spending a lot of time with him, you talk about him constantly, and today at the gym—" She cut me off. "Greg, it is not what you think. He is just my trainer." But her voice wavered and I could see the panic in her eyes. "Then why are you texting him outside of sessions?" I asked, keeping my tone calm but firm. Her face went pale. She set down her fork and said, "We need to talk." Ah, the 4 words every married person wants to hear after calling their spouse out for acting shady. At that point, I already knew this conversation was not going to end with, "You are right, Greg. I have been training too hard and forgot to tell you how much I appreciate you." Nope. Whatever was coming next was bound to be ridiculous. I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms. "All right, let us talk." Lila fidgeted, which was unusual for her. Normally, she is confident, quick with a response, and ready to debate about anything, even stuff she is clearly wrong about. But this time, she would not look me in the eye. "I do not know how to say this," she started, which is always a great opening line. "It is not what you think, okay?" I raised an eyebrow. "Well, that is comforting. What is it then?" She took a deep breath. "I have been feeling confused lately." "Confused," I repeated, deadpan. "About what?" She hesitated, and for a moment I thought maybe she would just drop it and tell me I was imagining things. No such luck. "About us," she said finally, "and about Dylan." There it was. I just stared at her, waiting for her to elaborate. "I did not mean for it to happen," she rushed on. It is not like I planned this or anything, but spending time with Dylan, I do not know, Greg. It is like we have this connection. A connection, of course. The universal excuse for doing something you know is wrong, but want to justify anyway. I let out a laugh, more out of disbelief than humor. A connection, really? That's what you were going with? She winced but kept going. I did not want to feel this way. I love you, Greg, I really do. But lately I have just been questioning everything.
And by everything you mean our marriage?
Yes, no, I do not know. She threw her hands up in frustration. I feel like I have lost myself, like who am I outside of this house, outside of us? I could feel my patience slipping, but I tried to keep my tone even. So you are saying you found yourself in Dylan's biceps? That is not fair, she snapped. It is not like that. Then explain it to me, Lila, because from where I am sitting, it sure looks like you are prioritizing your connection with your trainer over your marriage. She took a deep breath, clearly trying to steady herself. I think I need time to figure out what this is, what I am feeling. I paused and asked, and what does figuring this out look like to you? She hesitated for a second too long, then blurted out, I think I need to spend some time with Dylan. The words hung in the air. I froze, trying to process if she had really just said what I thought she said. You are serious? Yes, she said, her voice shaky but determined. It took everything in me not to laugh. So let me get this straight. You want to spend time with Dylan, your personal trainer, while I stay here, twiddling my thumbs, pretending this is not the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard? Greg, it is not like I want to hurt you, she said, her tone defensive. I just need some clarity. I need to know if this is real or if it is just a phase. A phase? I repeated. You mean like a midlife crisis, except instead of a sports car, you are testing out a personal trainer? She flinched, but did not deny it. I think I need 3 weeks, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Just 3 weeks to figure this out, to see if what I am feeling is real. I stared at her, trying to process the sheer audacity of what she was asking, but kept my cool. So, you were telling me you need a 3-week trial period with Dylan to decide if you still want to be married to me? She did not answer right away, which told me everything I needed to know. I tried to know if there was a problem in me or in our marriage that made her ask such stupid things. I stared at her, feeling a mix of disbelief and anger bubbling up. Lila, are you even happy in our marriage? Because it sure does not feel like it right now. Her head shot up at that, her eyes wide. Of course I am happy, Greg. You have given me everything. You are stable, dependable, and you have always supported me no matter what. Do you even hear yourself? I said, my tone sharper than I intended. You just described me as the perfect husband, but here you are asking for a hall pass to figure out your feelings with your trainer. Does that not sound insane to you? It is not insane, she shot back, her voice rising defensively. I am trying to be honest with you, Greg. Is not that what you always say you want, honesty? Oh, sure, I said, throwing up my hands. This is great, so honest. I am thrilled to know my wife needs a trial separation to date her gym buddy. Really makes me feel valued. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I felt a twinge of guilt. But then I remembered why we were having this conversation in the first place, and that guilt evaporated like steam off Dylan's stupid six-pack. I did not mean for it to happen, she said again, her voice cracking. I am so confused, Greg. Yeah, you have mentioned that, I said, leaning back in my chair. Funny how your confusion only started after you met Dylan, she said, wiping her eyes. This is not about him. It is about me, right? And I am sure Dylan's just an innocent bystander in all of this. He did not say anything. Just sat there like she was waiting for me to magically understand her warped logic. That silence, it spoke louder than any excuse she could have come up with. I realized then that no matter how much I pointed out how absurd this whole thing was, she was not going to see it. In her mind, this was perfectly reasonable. The more I thought about it, the more surreal it felt, like I had walked into some alternate reality where cheating was just a quirky little self-discovery exercise. Finally, I broke the silence. You know what, Lila? If you are so confused, go ahead. Take your 3 weeks, figure it out. Do whatever you need to do. Her eyes widened. Wait, really? Yeah, really, I said, my voice calm but cold. If you think that is what you need, go for it. She looked relieved, which was almost funny, considering how done I was in that moment. She stood up and gave me a hug. Thank you, Greg. I know this is a lot, but I really believe this is the right thing for us. She kept saying us, like this was some joint decision we had come to after a long, heartfelt discussion, like I was totally on board with her little experiment. But I did not argue. I did not yell or try to change her mind. I just nodded and said, do what you need to do, because deep down, I already knew this was not about us at all. It was about her, and if that is how she wanted to play it, I was not going to stop her, and I was not going to sit around and wait for her to come back either. The second she left the room, I was already mentally making a list of what came next. She did not pack her bags right away. I guess she wanted to ease into the whole trial separation thing, as if that made it any less ridiculous. She spent the next couple of days alternating between being overly nice to me and staying glued to her phone, texting someone who I am 99% sure was not her mom. I played it cool, acting like none of this was bothering me, but inside I was already done. The night before she officially started her 3-week journey to clarity, I stayed up late because I had things to do. I called a lawyer. I did not know if I would need them yet, but I figured it could not hurt to be prepared. Then, I set up a new bank account and transferred over some savings. Nothing huge, just enough to cover my bases in case things went south. After that, I started taking inventory, not just of the stuff in the house, but of my life in general. I made a mental list of what I would keep if this whole thing went where I thought it was heading. The couch, mine. The TV, also mine. The ridiculous number of throw pillows she had bought for every single chair in the house, those could go. By the time I was done, I was not angry anymore. I was just done. It is hard to explain, but something about that night shifted things for me. I had spent so much time trying to make sense of Lila's behavior, trying to figure out if I could fix this. But now I was focused on fixing myself. The next morning, Lila finally told me she was packing a bag. She said it like she was announcing she had booked a weekend spa retreat, all casual and chipper. "I think this time apart will be good for us," she said, smiling like she was not walking out on our marriage to test drive her trainer. "Sure," I said, keeping my tone neutral, "if that is what you need." She left the house later that day. I did not ask where she was going or what her plan was. I did not need to. I had a pretty good idea of where she would end up. The first couple of days without her felt weird, but not in the way you would expect. It was not like I was heartbroken or even particularly sad. It was more like realizing you have been holding your breath for months and finally exhaling. I went ahead and filed for divorce. This was not about being sneaky or vindictive. It was about protecting myself. I did not want to be in a marriage where I was a backup plan, waiting around while my wife figured things out with her trainer. Filing was my way of saying I am done, and it was not easy, but honestly, it felt like the right thing to do. I kept myself busy. I worked late, hit the gym, at a different gym, obviously, and even started reading a book I had been meaning to pick up for years. I was not sitting around pining for Lila to come back. If anything, I felt lighter. Friends started to notice something was up. A couple of them asked where Lila was, and I kept my answers vague. "Oh, she is staying with her sister for a bit," I would say, trying to sound casual, like it was not a big deal. I was not ready to air the full story yet, especially since I was not sure how I felt about it all myself. Most people did not press further, but you could tell they were curious. When some asked, "Everything okay between you two?" I just shrugged and changed the subject. The last thing I wanted was to become the centerpiece of neighborhood gossip. At some point, Lila's sister decided to chime in, calling me with this mocking tone, like the whole situation was a joke. "Greg, you know how Lila is," she said, laughing. "She is impulsive. Do not take it so seriously." I did not engage. Instead, I calmly replied, "Do not worry. I am working on something special for her, a surprise she will not forget." The line went silent for a moment before she awkwardly mumbled something and hung up. I figured she would get the message soon enough when the papers landed in her sister's hands. The only person I told the truth to was my dad. A few days after Lila left, I gave him a call. As soon as he picked up, I blurted it all out. The gym, Dylan, the 3-week break, everything. When I finally stopped talking, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. I almost thought the call had dropped, until he let out a deep sigh. "Well, son," he said finally, "I hate to say it, but it sounds like you are better off without her." At first, I did not know how to respond. I guess I had expected him to be more upset or at least ask more questions, but he was not angry, just matter-of-fact about the whole thing. "She left, Greg. You did not push her out. If she cannot see what she had in you, why should you sit around waiting for her to figure it out?" That hit me. I had not thought about it like that before. I was so caught up in trying to make sense of her actions that I did not stop to think about what I deserved. He kept talking, offering his support and reminding me that sometimes letting go is the best thing you can do. But that one line stuck with me. If she does not know your worth, why should you wait around for her to figure it out? He was right. I did not need to justify myself to Lila, or to anyone else for that matter. She had made her choices, and it was time for me to make mine. That is not to say I did not hear about her, though. Eventually, small-town suburbs have a way of making sure everyone knows everyone else's business. A neighbor mentioned seeing her at the park with a guy who matched Dylan's description. Another said they spotted her at a trendy cafe downtown, laughing over what looked like smoothies. By week 2, the story started to get more specific. Someone saw her and Dylan grocery shopping together. Another person claimed they saw them holding hands at the farmer's market. I was not actively looking for updates, but people could not seem to help themselves. At first, I felt a pang every time someone mentioned her, not jealousy exactly, more like frustration. Frustration that I had been dragged into this mess, and that she was treating this whole thing like it was some kind of dating adventure, instead of, a marriage. By the end of the 3 weeks, I felt like a different person, stronger, clearer. I had spent so much time trying to make sense of Lila's actions, but now I realized I did not need to. Her choices were hers, and they did not define me. Whether Lila came back or not did not really matter. What mattered was that I was not going to spend the rest of my life being Plan B. The last few days before her trial period ended were oddly peaceful. I felt ready to hear her out, sure, but also ready to stand my ground. Exactly 3 weeks later, Lila waltzed back into the house like she had just come back from summer camp. Her hair was perfect, her makeup subtly on point, and she had this air of calm about her, like she had not just spent the past 3 weeks figuring things out with Dylan, the trainer of the year. "Hey," she chirped, dropping her bag by the door. "I am back." She said it so casually, like she was returning from a long weekend with her girlfriends instead of what this actually was. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels, not really watching anything. I muted the TV and glanced at her. "Welcome back." She hesitated, probably expecting me to jump up, sweep her into my arms, and ask her if she chose me or him. When that did not happen, she walked over and sat down next to me, close but not too close, like she was testing the waters. "We should talk," she said softly. I turned to face her, keeping my expression neutral. "All right, talk." She gave me this soft smile, the kind she used to flash when she wanted to butter me up before asking for something ridiculous. "I have done a lot of thinking," she started, her voice gentle, like she was breaking bad news to a kid about Santa Claus. "And I have realized something really important." I leaned back against the couch, waiting for the big reveal. "Greg," she continued, "you mean so much to me. I care about you deeply, and I have realized that what we have is special. It is stable." "Stable?" I repeated deadpan. "Yes, stable," she said, like that was the highest compliment a marriage could receive. "What we have built together, our home, our history, it is not something I want to throw away." I nodded, letting her keep going. "And Dylan?" She paused, probably trying to figure out how to phrase this next part without making herself sound like the bad guy. "He is fun. He is exciting, but he is not what I need. He is immature." "Immature?" I echoed. "Yes," she said quickly. "I think I got caught up in the novelty of it all. It was flattering, having someone pay attention to me like that, but it was not real, not like what we have." I could not help but smirk at the absurdity of it all. Here she was, painting this whole mess as some grand personal growth journey, like she was the protagonist in a life-changing drama, and I should be grateful that after weighing her options, she had graciously decided I was the stable choice. "That is what you were figuring out for 3 weeks?" I asked, my tone light but edged with sarcasm. Her smile faltered slightly. "I needed time, Greg. Time to clear my head to understand what I really want." "And what do you want?" I asked, already knowing the answer but curious to see how she would frame it. "I want us," she said, leaning forward and placing a hand on my arm. "I want to rebuild what we have. I want to move forward together, stronger than before." Her voice was full of sincerity, but I was not buying it, not after everything I had seen, heard, and pieced together over the past 3 weeks. I stood up, leaving her hand hanging in midair. "Give me a second," I said, walking toward the kitchen. She watched me, probably wondering what I was doing. I opened the drawer where I had stashed the papers I had been preparing since the day she walked out the door. Grabbing the folder, I walked back to the living room and set it on the coffee table in front of her. "What is this?" she asked, looking confused. "Divorce papers," I said simply. Her confusion turned to disbelief. "Wait, what? You were joking, right?" "Nope, Greg, come on," she said, laughing nervously. "This is not funny." "I'm not trying to be funny," I said, sitting back down. "I'm just not interested in being your backup plan." Her jaw dropped. "Backup plan? That is not fair." "You are not a backup plan, really, because that is exactly what this feels like," I said, keeping my tone calm but firm. "You left for 3 weeks to explore whatever it is you thought you had with Dylan. And now that you have decided he is not the one, You want to come back like nothing happened. That is not how this works, Lila." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I thought she might actually apologize, but instead, she went on the defensive. "This is not about making you a backup plan," she said, her voice shaking. "I needed time to figure things out, Greg, to make sure I was not making a mistake. And in the process, you made about a dozen other mistakes," I pointed out. She stood up. "So that is it? You are just throwing everything away over one mistake?" "It was not one mistake," I said. "It was a series of choices. You chose to prioritize Dylan over me. You chose to lie, to sneak around, to leave, and now I am choosing not to tolerate it anymore." She stared at me, her face a mix of anger and disbelief, but I did not waver. I had spent the past 3 weeks preparing for this moment, and I was not about to back down now. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Suddenly, she crumpled onto the couch, crying openly. Now I was confused. I thought we could move past this. My patience was completely gone. I did not answer. I was already fed up. Her sobs grew louder. "Get your things, Lila," I said, my tone final, "and go. You have got your answers. Now, and so do I." She stood up slowly, still crying, her face a mixture of heartbreak and desperation. "You are really doing this?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I am really doing this." For a moment, she just stood there, like she was hoping I would change my mind at the last second. When I did not, she let out a defeated sigh, grabbed her bag, and headed for the door. She turned back one last time, her voice shaking. "You will regret this, Greg." I met her gaze unflinching. "No, Lila, the only thing I would regret is letting you stay." And with that, she was gone. As the door closed behind her, I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. But she did not disappear entirely after that awkward, dramatic goodbye. The next day, she showed up with empty boxes and a forced smile, claiming she just needed to grab a few things. "Greg, we have been through so much. You cannot just give up," she said, watching me as she packed her throw blankets. I did not even look up. "Lila, I am not the one who gave up. You made your choice. I am just following through." Her face twisted like I just told her the world was ending. "You are abandoning me when I need you most," she said, playing the victim. I set my coffee down. "You are not abandoning someone who already left. You made this mess, Lila. I'm not cleaning it up." She slammed the door on her way out, and for the first time the house felt like it could breathe again. Over the next few weeks, things settled into this weird limbo. Lila moved in with her sister, and the divorce process officially started. She tried to drag it out, probably thinking I would change my mind if she made things difficult enough. Our mutual friends got wind of what happened, and the reactions were mixed. Most of them stayed neutral, which I appreciated. But a few of them, mostly her closer friends, took her side, saying I was being too harsh and that I should have at least tried to work things out. Work things out with someone who left me for a trainer? Yeah, no thanks. The people who really mattered understood. They had seen what Lila had done, and knew I was not the bad guy here. One of my buddies even said, "Man, she is lucky you did not change the locks the second she left for the gym." Honestly, I kind of wish I had. In the end, the divorce was not as messy as I expected. Lila walked away with some furniture, a bit of cash, and that was about it. I kept the house, most of my savings, and most importantly, my peace of mind. After the papers were signed and the dust settled, she tried reaching out a few times. Her texts were vague and always leaned on nostalgia. "I have been thinking about you," one said. "I miss what we had," read another. I never responded. I was not about to reopen that door. Not long after everything was finalized, I heard through the grapevine that Dylan had dumped her. Apparently, he was not ready for commitment. Imagine my surprise. The guy who spends more time flexing in gym mirrors than forming actual relationships did not want to settle down? Shocking. From what I have heard, Lila is now living with her sister and working a retail job she absolutely hates. Do I feel bad for her? Not really. She made her choices, and now she is dealing with the consequences. As for me, I am doing better than I have in years. This whole mess turned out to be a wake-up call. It forced me to reevaluate what I want, what I deserve, and what I am willing to tolerate in a relationship. The biggest lesson I learned: I will never settle for being someone's backup plan again. Life is too short to be anything but someone's first choice, and now I am finally living like that is true.